Greetings and welcome back, Eric's UK here. Today I will be doing a review of the Rites of Battle sourcebook for the Deathwatch role-playing game. So you better look at that. I believe this was the first sourcebook released for the game after the Games Masters kit. I could be wrong on that, but I think it is. Okay, essentially what this is a nice set of optional rules, really. It's very disjointed because there's no real correlation between the various things that you have in the book, and you can cherry pick what you want to use very easily. I will go through what you get so you get an idea. Initially you get Deathwatch Origins as the first chapter, which gives you basically the background on the undertakings and what an aspirant would need to undergo in order to be chosen to join the Deathwatch, which is quite interesting. Doesn't really add any mechanical rules to the game, it just gives you a bit of fluff. You then get a series of random rolls allowing a player or a GM to randomly create their own chapter. Now obviously you can just pick and choose as you go along, what have you, but it's designed that you would roll and create something truly random. And it starts from why was the chapter created, to what millennium, eventually going through to what successor are you, what are your what's your background, what sort of tactics does your chapter use, and so forth, and it uses that to build up to create your own chapter. It's quite interesting. I've tried it to create some random chapters and they do come out very random. I don't know how useful it is for actually creating a chapter for the game, but it's again an interesting option for those GMs that want to use it. From here you then get rules for the Imperial Fists chapter to go along with those chapters you've got in the rulebook, and you get everything you need from there. The book then goes into successor chapters, so those that came after the original ones, the first founding, and you get 2 or 3 for each of those chapters. So example, Nova Marines, Mortificators, Angels of Absolution, Flesh Tearers, Lamenters, Blood Drinkers, Crimson Fists. You get the idea. Now these are quite nice, however they do one thing which I find slightly irksome, and that's that these, using what's in this book, get a little something extra that the chapters in the rule book don't get. The majority of them have a extra tiny little rule. It might be something like this chapter gets a +10 bonus to Forbidden Law Xenos rolls. Something simple as that. Or it might be here, if I take the Subjugators, which are here on the page before me, they use the rules for Imperial Fists in all cases, with the exception that they use the solo and squad mode abilities of Black Templars. No, fair enough, but it does seem that they've got that little something different than what you had before. I don't think it overpowers them in any way, shape or form, but it certainly seems to me that these suddenly become a better option simply because you're getting a bonus that the normal chapters don't get. It then goes on to what's called Joint Operations, which is a guide to using Deathwatch Marines or with Dark Heresy or Rogue Trader, or mix and matching the 3. I personally wouldn't. I don't think that the 3 games, or 4, soon to be 5 that there are now, need to be combined in that way. Just play one of them, then it's fairly balanced. But again, it's an option for people that want it. You then get a chapter called The Call of War, and this first thing this gives you is deeds. Now deeds are something you can buy at first level with your initial experience points. They indicate that you have been involved in something either before joining the Deathwatch or as one of your first missions when you join the Deathwatch. And again, it might cost you 300 points, but you gain a bonus to weapon skill and a trait or a talent, something like that. There are quite a few of these. There are chapter ones, there's Deathwatch ones, campaign idea ones, that sort of thing. This is in fact one of those optional bits that I was talking about earlier that I probably wouldn't use. I just don't think it's, for me, it's necessary. It just adds another level of complexity to the character generation that you don't need. But if it's the sort of thing you like, either as a player or as your GM, in order to have that bit more background or backstory to the characters, then go for it. Distinctions are another version of that, something that you have done before you joined the Deathwatch. Let's just jump through. And then you get advanced specialities. So these are an extra sort of, I was going to say class then, but that's a different sort of RPG. But a different sort of profession that you can add on top of what you've already got. One I'll raise up first, which, simply because if someone out there has read this, they might give me an idea of what I'm missing here. But you have Deathwatch Black Shield, and you can take this to rank 1 when you create the character for nothing. Sorted. Because what it is, it's a Marine who has turned up at a Deathwatch station. They have painted their armour black. There is no chapter symbol on the pauldron. They've done something, or something has happened where they feel they need to atone. They turn up, they request permission to join the Deathwatch. No questions are asked. They undergo some kind of, say interrogation, but it'd be interview, as it were, almost. And if found acceptable, the watch captain, or watch commander rather, allows them to become a Deathwatch Marine. And they will then do their best because they want to erase that stain on their honour or on their soul, and they will go out and they will lead the charge, and they will do, it's kind of almost like the French Foreign Legion in 40k. And that's fine. It basically replaces the chapter you would choose, except where it gives you like special abilities and becoming a Black Shield and all sorts of stuff. There's no mention of any of the modifiers that a normal chapter would get. So your Ultramarine or whatever would get like a +5 or +10 to 1 or 2 stats or something. There's nothing like this that I can see in this particular thing. It seems you lose all that for gaining a couple of special rules for being a Black Shield. I might be missing something. If someone out there has read this and can point me whether I'm right or wrong on that, that would be great. But it seems a little unusual to me. Anyway, moving on. You get Deathwatch Champion, which is quite nice. You get the Deathwatch Chaplain. Deathwatch Dreadnought, which is really an odd one. It's kind of nice it's in there that if you meet all these incredibly hard criteria and you die doing something heroic, you have the option of being interred, providing they get your body back, in a Dreadnought. But as it says, Dreadnoughts are not usable in every mission. They're great when you want to go in there and you want to kick ass and chew bubblegum, whatever. But when you've got a stealthy, sneaky mission or an assassination on a Tower Ethereal, you don't want a Dreadnought wandering around. And so that makes it fairly hard on the player in question. It does suggest that they make another character and then they choose the one which is best suited to go on the mission. But I think that's a little bit of a nuisance, really. Either you allow the Dreadnought the whole time in some fashion, or you force them to, the Dreadnought comes to NPC and you force them to play a proper normal player character. It's a bit odd. It's quite good. I'm glad it's in there, but again, it's one of those optional things. If you want to allow it, fine, but you then got to work it into all of the missions. Then you get Deathwatch Epistolary, which is the librarian upgrade, although rather than make them a stronger, more powerful librarian, they make them exceedingly anti-Xenos. They gain benefits against Xenos, and you get 2 psychic powers, or you can learn 2 psychic powers that boost you against Xenos. Whereas really in the fluff, the Epistolary is just a more powerful psychic. Deathwatch Forge Master, which is nice. The Deathwatch Keeper, which is the guys who protect all the relics and so forth. The Kill Marine, which is a really nice one. It's basically the guy, he's the Chuck Norris of Space Marines, who just goes in there and kicks ass, basically, which is really good. Deathwatch Captain, which basically, once you allow that and you've got one in your team, that guy is always the leader and gains bonuses and benefits for that. The First Company Veteran, again, really nice. Not so keen on the abilities though. Some of these classes, basically, or professions, whatever you want to call them, have a list of like 3 or 4 abilities. At the beginning of a mission, once you know what you're doing, that player picks one of those abilities for that mission. which is nice. It gives you options based on what you're doing. But I don't particularly rate the 4 you get for being a first company veteran. The advances for skills and so forth are fairly standard. The survivor ability is really where I think they're quite good, because you take that talent, you pick a relevant stat from a list in here, and then basically it's assumed that you are able to, you've had some situation involving that before, whether it's poison or exposure to space, and you get an easier time of resisting it in the future. Chapter 3 is an expanded war gear, which is kind of nice in that you've got some extra bits and bobs, extra toys rather. The weapons I'm not particularly keen on. They don't seem all that different to what you get in the rulebook. It would have been quite nice to see something a bit more impressive, perhaps. There are some new special issue ammunition for tactical marines, but really they're nothing to write home about. Then you get various weapon upgrades like tripods for heavy weapons, you get grab chutes, camo cloaks and so forth, and then it goes on to power armor, and then it gives you rules for all the versions of power armor 1 through 8. It assumes, it gives you the rules for it, but it assumes that you can't have anything less than a Mark IV because they're just too old or what have you. But it gives the option for players to pick the suit that they want their marine to wear. To be fair though, I don't see any real point of taking anything other than the basic Mark 7, because they have, they have a couple of little funky rules themselves, and usually there's a penalty for the older ones because the bits don't work so well together, or it's a reminder of the heresy or what have you. But again, it's a series of options that you can have. They give you expanded history of your armour, though again in general I think the one in the rulebook is better. You get some more relics for your chapter. Then you get the bit that I really enjoyed in this, which is chapter 4, vehicles. And finally you get the option to be able to take rhinos or predators or what have you. It gives you rules for vehicle combat and aerial combat. The vehicle combat is fairly normal, it's what I would expect. The aerial combat is a little bit lacking. I've yet to find an RPG that actually gives you what I would want out of an aerial combat system. This is again far too much a case of you can do this, each movement is this, you can do a 45-degree turn for every so much that you move, blah 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 blah. I actually prefer plane or spaceship combat to be a bit more freeform, and it's basically more, what I would prefer is something that's more like a roll to see who gets into a better position because you're dogfighting sort of thing. I actually find the aerial combat rules in this a little irritating because you need some means of keeping track of it, and I'd rather there'd been something a little bit more simple. But you, as I say, you get the various things like rules for drop pods, different land raiders, including the Land Raider Terminus Ultra, which I had a screen moment for because I own one of those models. Land speeders, predators, and so forth, and it then goes into some alien vehicles. You get rules for chaos. Oh, I forgot to mention, you also get Warhound Titans. Not that it says that you can requisition them. You get vehicles for Chaos Marines, including the Defilers. You get Tau vehicles. The requisition rules are slightly different in that you don't spend points from them. Your team leader has to have a certain renown level, like distinguished or what have you, in order to take one. And then the GM has to agree that the mission is appropriate to taking the vehicle. But it's nice to have it in there. Chapter 5 is Honour or Death, which expands on the renown rules. Again, it's quite nice, but it's an optional rule I don't really think you need. The honours is just things like your character being awarded like the Crux Terminatus or an Imperial Laurel. There's no rules mechanic for it. It just gives you an idea of what role-playing opportunities would be given if your character turns up to Space Marines or other Imperial Commanders and you've got these particular honours on you. The very interesting thing, and they carry this on later in other books, is a boost to the requisitions, because you can choose, again, with the GM's permission on certain things, what are called assets. Now, assets could be something like instead of spending all your resource points, or requisition points rather, on upgrading your weapons or taking something big and gribbly, you can turn around and go, well, actually, if we're going to do this mission, we want, I don't know, the enemy base over there to be dealt with beforehand, and you can call down an orbital strike from an Imperial cruiser. It could be that you know that the enemy has aircraft, so you call in air support, and then there are rules for them having a dogfight to see who wins, sort of thing. Imperial Guard assets, where you can ask for basilisk fire or sappers or something like that. You've got ones for the Inquisition, calling in any Astartes that are in the area, so you can have, say, a assault squad come down and take on a secondary objective that you don't want to have to deal with, that sort of thing. Obviously, anything that they do that you're supposed to, you don't get the renown for it or the accolades or anything like that. It goes to them. So it's a case of whether the party or the players want to do it themselves and gain the rewards, or they just want to be able to focus on the primary objective. They can spend resources to get someone else to do the secondaries. The last chapters is to do with Watch Fortress Iriok. It gives you some idea of what lies within the fortress, prisoners, more NPCs that you can use for your characters, and gives you an idea of some of the missions that they might be sent on, tasks that the watch station has already dispatched, kind of like not like a history, but this is the sort of thing, exterminators or purges or stories of certain Marines who have earned accolades by doing, whatever. And that's basically what you get in this book. As I said, and hopefully you kind of get where I'm coming from, it's a big book of options for you to choose what you want. I think it's a good book. I haven't found a Deathwatch source book that I've disappointed with yet. This particular one, I think, where you've got, I'll come back to this sec, you've got other books which give you details on the various war zones, the salients. You've got stuff for chapters and so forth. I think those are entirely optional to your game. I think, though, that if you're going to have those, you've got to buy Rites of Battle. You've got to have it, because it builds off of what you get from there. The salience books gives you more assets based on which salient you are fighting in. The first founding book expands on the chapters that are given in here. You get your original ones, and you've got later stuff that gives you even more successor chapters. But without this book, I think you'll be slightly lost on those. You don't necessarily always need it, but I think it would be very handy to have. But that's with that particular book done. Next time I shall be reviewing probably the Games Masters kit and one of the other books. I haven't decided which one I want to reread yet. But until next time, take care and good gaming.